municipalities can play a key role in South Africa's economic development. This is according to Helanya Fourie, Senior Economist at the Bureau for Economic Research. Ms. Fourie joins us now to expand further on municipal economic development and service delivery. Ms. Fourie, welcome to the Daytime Update. So let's focus then on this role that municipalities can play in economic development. A large part of the focus has really been on issues of service delivery, on water, on electricity, and sometimes even housing, even though that's not really their core competency. Talk to us about their role in economic development then.
Thanks, Tammy, for the opportunity. I think the first thing to realize is that we often get sort of bogged down by issues in specific localities and with party politics in specific areas, or large firms closing shop in towns, that we forget the macroeconomic impact of all of these effects or all of these dynamics. If you have municipalities who aren't delivering their services, then firms are hesitant to invest, which leads to slower economic growth, which makes it more difficult for households to pay for the services that they want to receive, which in turn leads to worse financial positions of municipalities and hence even worse service delivery. So it becomes sort of a vicious cycle that has a macroeconomic impact far beyond just the effects of poor service delivery in specific areas. I think in that light, the good governance of local municipalities in particular is one of the biggest developmental constraints that South Africa faces. As one of the objectives of the Economic Recovery and Reconstruction Plan is to increase investment, we need municipalities to operate in a healthy and sustainable manner so that people are willing to invest in these areas and to contribute to South Africa's economic growth.
And we've seen how the lack of provision of the basic services has led companies in some instances to even want to withdraw from the area that they're trading in. There's the situation of clover, for example. Talk to us about how rife these situations are.
Yeah, so I think we focus on, or we're aware of companies like Clover and Astral closing shop or going into fights with municipalities about poor service delivery with, significant impacts on the economies or the local economies where they operate or are operational. But we forget about all the small firms who don't make the news, or the entrepreneur who decides not to open up an enterprise in a specific area because he's uncertain of whether there will be water or electricity to enable him to do that. I think all of these uncertainties increase risks. If you're entrepreneurial, if you're a potential investor, you certainly want to minimize your risks, which these risks make it more difficult or more expensive to invest, and just the cycle continues.
In the case of Astral Foods, who took the Lekwa municipality to court, the court ruled in their favor. But apart from taking municipalities to courts, what is it that businesses can do in order to assist in the turnaround, even for their own good and for their own benefit? As you mentioned, the trickle-on effect is a loss of jobs as well for the municipality.
So I think the loss of jobs is severe. It's a good question. I think something like the local election that's coming up is, of course, pivotal. It's really the only instrument, or it's the most powerful instrument that businesses and society and civilians have to try and turn things around. Now, I know there are many people who have lost confidence and who might doubt the effectiveness of voting, but at the end of the day, the democratic process is really what we have to rely on. I think, to the extent that it's possible, I think businesses should try and make sure that the right people are appointed to municipal government or governance. One of the big problems that we see is that municipal officials don't have the right competencies, don't have the right qualifications. We see a high share of vacancies also in many municipalities, which makes it very difficult for good service delivery to take place. Just to give you an example, if you have a technical director writing specs for some infrastructure project, but that person perhaps is not an engineer, the chance that the specs are going to be well written and that you'll actually get good people applying or tendering for the project is really quite limited. So I think involvement to make sure that good people are appointed to municipalities is crucial.
Should businesses be more engaged and involved in this process? Because ultimately, business is in business to make money and to turn a profit. And where then do you draw the line between the business and the politics of it, while you still have to ensure that the right people with the requisite skills actually get into positions where they are able to positively impact your business?
Good question. So one of the things that we do sort of touch on in the notes or in our report, although we don't go into much detail about it, is to say that public-private partnerships might be one way in which service delivery could be improved. The private sector, of course, has access to perhaps better skill sets and more funding than municipalities have, but one should then also keep in mind that these relationships or these sort of PPP projects can very easily become quite complicated. So again, back to the skills issue, if you don't have the right people in the municipality who are able to organize or to coordinate complex projects in collaboration with the private sector or with business, then chances are you still won't achieve the desired outcome. So in many ways, it comes back to an issue of merit-based appointments and the right people being appointed in the right positions.
Can residents also push towards economic development within municipalities? What role can they play?
Well, I think they can vote, for starters. I think so. We also don't specifically look at the role of residents in all of this. But I think, voting and sort of revealing to the media where things aren't going well and making sure that people are aware of the constraints and of the service delivery issues are some of the most important things that residents can do.
Perhaps let's recap with some solutions here on a way forward, how municipalities can participate in economic development.
I think municipalities need to remember that their impacts stretch far beyond just the sometimes small or limited communities that they serve. Of course, some of them serve quite big communities. It's important to remember that. I think it's something that we didn't discuss now, but that we go into quite extensively in our research, is the constraints posed by, for instance, the auditing process and the fact that many municipalities are more focused on getting clean audit outcomes than on actually getting good service delivery performance outcomes. So I think municipalities should think carefully about the incentives that these different processes create, and should make sure that their primary focus is not so much just on the minutiae of compliance, but that the bigger objectives of their mandate to serve the community and to provide services and to create investor confidence is met.
And what role then does national government play in this entire scenario? We do know that economic growth and local development, all of that is very much dependent on the municipal finances as well.
Yeah, certainly. So national government, from a financial perspective, plays a more important role in smaller municipalities than in, for instance, your metros. In the metros, we see that up to 70% of their income comes from own revenue sources like service charges or property rates and taxes, whereas in smaller municipalities, that share of income is only about 40%, and the bulk is made up by grants from national government. Of course, in a post-COVID world where there are many constraints on the fiscus, this reliance on grants from national government is a risk, and certainly a financial risk to smaller municipalities. It's not the ideal situation. But I think national government also has a bigger role in terms of sort of creating the right morale, creating the right, I'm not sure what the right word is, but the right sort of environment and the right checks and balances to make sure that municipalities deliver on their mandates. They should put steps in place so that if someone is not delivering or not providing or completing their tasks in any adequate manner, then there should be mechanisms in place to sort of remove them from their position. Things like the auditing process, etc., I think are important and often more of a top-down, dictated by top-down processes rather than bottom-up.
You mentioned something in your research, a recommendation that municipal managers should perhaps be registered with professional bodies. Break that down for us.
Yeah, so I think, again, it comes down to making merit-based appointments. If a municipal manager perhaps has like some kind of managerial qualification, or if your technical director is an engineer, your CFO is perhaps registered as a chartered accountant, it just makes it a little bit easier to make sure that the right people are appointed in the right jobs. And if you are part of an sort of registered organization or a bigger grouping of professionals, then that also creates an additional sort of point of accountability for you to do your job.
Ms. Fourie, we thank you very much for your insight and your time. Very necessary conversations and perspectives that we need to be looking at, specifically as we make our way to the upcoming local government elections. She is Helanya Fourie, Senior Economist at the Bureau for Economic Research. Thank you, ma'am.